See, these things actually trouble Jews and Christians. There's no reason to cover up that fact that these passages have caused difficulty for Jews and Christians throughout history. And some people would say, actually, these things never happened at all. That they were fables designed to teach.
Do you believe
that they were fables designed to teach that you are to be completely pure and reject sin, and that all that business about killing this one and that one is about rejecting various sins.
Want to know your
Now, the whole point of what I'm saying here, if you would stop interrupting for a minute, the point that I was making was that the Old Testament and the New Testament, as I said before, are records of an evolving understanding among the people of God. And that because of that evolving understanding, they came to realize that these things had no applicability for all people for all time.
With the Bible, the problem that you have is the same one that you want to talk about, the loving Jesus Christ himself, which we also adore and respect as a prophet, is the same one that you believe is God and revealed the Old Testament. And you can't get out of that. So when your God, Jesus, revealed at that specific time, as I just read the passage, and I can read you plenty more, where he says to kill babies in war. Is it okay to target infants in war and kill babies? Is that inherently immoral? The problem that you have is if you go on, and this is why the argument is so important. It's not a tu quoque just as a fallacious argument. It's checking for your consistency as a Christian, whether or not you're actually faithful to your own text and tradition. And the reality is you're not. Why? You have two options. If you condemn it as inherently immoral, then the whole Bible's gone. Because if you believe that those verses in the Bible were revealed by God, then you're saying that God is immoral. And on the other hand, if you say that it's not inherently immoral, but God changed the law at this time, then most of your arguments lose the force that they have against Islam, because you can no longer argue that it is inherently immoral.
Just on this point of violence, I think Jake makes really the crucial point. It's that Jesus, according to the Christian belief, Jesus is the God of the Old Testament. And he's the one who's commanding Moses, for example, to ethnically cleanse the Canaanites or the Amalekites or all of these other tribes, and to conduct conquests and war, to take girls as slaves, to take virgins as slaves. This is in the Old Testament, sure. So Christians have to deal with that moral problem. A lot of Christians, unfortunately, they just throw the Bible under the bus. And, how is that justified? But it's not just the Old Testament. It's also the New Testament. The New Testament also endorses slavery. The New Testament also has the book of Revelation, where Jesus is going to come, which, by the way, Muslims also believe that Jesus is the Messiah. He is the born of the Virgin Mary, and he's going to come as the Messiah to establish God's kingdom on earth. Muslims also accept and believe that, and we're anticipating that. But he's going to be very violent. It's going to be a very violent affair, and that's in the Muslim tradition and the Hadith, and it's also in the book of Revelation. So Jesus is also very violent. And then finally, you have canon law. You have the church tradition. So if Robert wants to denounce canon law, because when you have canon law, it has slavery, it has a marriage age of 12 years old in canon law, it has punishments for blasphemy, it has even, striking the wife, the disobedient wife. That's found in canon law from Gratian. So I believe that Robert is an Orthodox Christian. If he wants to denounce canon law and denounce his own tradition, he can denounce that. He can denounce Jesus himself. He can denounce the Old Testament. He can denounce the Bible. The New Testament, that's fine. That's fine. He says that, our religion adapts, our religion changes. But that's actually the problem, Patrick. When we're talking about wokeism, when we're talking about if you can say that, that's the Old Testament is for those times, it's not applicable now. Right? That's the argument. The violence, the killing of blasphemers, that's for old times. We've changed, but Muslims are not willing to change. I say, Muslims are willing to stand by revelation. The problem with a lot of Christians, not all Christians, a lot of Christians, Jews, Hindus, they all have these practices in their books. Buddhists, they all have these practices, and they're pressured to change and update. And so if you can get rid of the conquest and the violence and the punishment for apostasy, why not just get rid of the prohibition prohibition of like cross-dressing, the prohibition of homosexuality, the prohibition of drag queens. Why prohibit any of that? Like maybe times are different. Maybe we need to adopt drag queen story hour in our church. Maybe we need to adopt, all of these woke practices. Why not?
And Robert, here's what I would say. You're making a very good argument, and I can totally feel where you're coming from as well. Obviously, just so everybody knows, have we ever had a conversation together prior to this debate? I just want everybody that's watching, have you and I ever spoken?
We just met a few minutes ago.
Have you and I ever spoken?
No.
Have you and I?
No.
I did that intentionally. Because I wanted to be the first interaction we have where it's not like, well, this topic, do you want this, do you want that? And nobody was given additional topics or what. You just kind of came in, we're going to talk, we're going to have this discussion. Again, I respect you guys for doing this. I think the part I agree with Daniel, and it could be a leak, it could be a flaw, or it could be a strength as well as the following. What I'm noticing between the two faiths is one seems to be more intolerant, and the other one's more tolerant. Let me unpack that from my perspective. For the longest time since I since I started praying September of 1997, I've prayed for four things: courage, wisdom, tolerance, understanding. The last 6 months, I've been having a hard time praying for the third thing, which is tolerance. And the reason for it is because I think Christians are becoming way too tolerant. Now,